Hello, I'm Poppy Miller. Welcome along to my NWSL previews presented by Zelle. Zelle is a great way to send money to friends and family wherever they bank in the US. Look for it in your banking app today. We're coming into the home stretch of the regular season and the playoff race is well and truly on, with only 7 points separating second through 8th place in the standings. Let's take a look at what we've got coming up this week. It all gets started Wednesday night as the Dash welcome the high-flying Rain to Houston. Then a trio of matches to look forward to on Saturday, including Gotham FC taking on the Red Stars. Louisville will be looking to play spoiler against the Rain at 7:30 Eastern. And the league leaders, the Portland Thorns, are in action against the Spirit to conclude Saturday's slate. And 2 matches on Sunday. The Pride hosting the Dash, and Kansas City will welcome North Carolina to Legends Field. So the race is on. The Olympians are back just in time for the final quarter of the season, where the pressure is mounting. And here to look ahead to this week's slate, our former Olympic gold medalist Aly Wagner is here with us. Aly, let's start with tonight's match. The OL Reign are red-hot winners of their last 2, including a 2-1 win against the league leaders on Sunday. What's clicking for them right now, and how do you see them faring against the Dash tonight?
You know, I think what's clicking for them is they have probably the best front 5 in all of the NWSL in terms of attacking talent, and they also have the depth. But as you look at the stretch for both these teams, they are both coming off those wins over the weekend, but they're in a difficult situation. They have to play 3 games in 7 days for OL Reign, 3 games in 8 days for the Dash. So this game slotted right in the middle is an interesting one, and I don't think some of the older legs that you'll find on the OL Reign side will be able to go over 60 minutes in all 3. Megan Rapinoe, I know she was a player that played more minutes against Gotham, against Portland, had the brace that lifted them in that match. I don't think she can go the distance, through this really difficult, congested fixture schedule. So the question will be, where does she get rest? Where does she recuperate? And for the Dash, they're coming into a situation where they're the ones on the outside looking in. And over the next 2 games, they're going to be home here. And then, as you said, Poppy, they'll be off to Orlando. And that's another team that's in playoff contention. So picking up 4 points out of these 2 games is incredibly important. So that backdrop is really meaningful for tonight's match, because ultimately, how do these 2 managers manage their squad, manage the minutes, manage the players, and still pick up points along the way? I think as a result, it could be a relative cagey affair. Last time out, not the case, right? OL Reign dominated Houston Dash 5-1. I think the Dash team said we lost our way for about 12 minutes, and that's where we lost that match. Ultimately, I think they're going to try to keep things tight and look to take advantage of their opponent once they hit that 70-minute mark. That's what they do when they host. They've been really strong hosting this season, and they like to take advantage of their opponent as they fatigue in this heat and humidity. So I think it could be a cagey affair. I do think that this OL Reign has the talent to take it to the Dash if the Dash do sit back, because Huerta slotted in an outside back position, the right outside back in their last match, and she's an attacking personality. So it's going to be with that double-edged sword. How often does she rotate, get in the attack? Same thing on the other side for their OL Reign. And if they do that, those are the spaces that the Dash are going to look to take advantage of in transition. So cagey affair. I think, the decisions of when to go, when to force it are ultimately going to be deciding factors in this one.
And a great point. The games are coming thick and fast. So the Reign are climbing their way up the standings. A win tonight would put them equal on points with 2nd place North Carolina. Elsewhere, a team that's desperately trying to regain their form is Gotham FC. They haven't won in over a month now. They're looking to get back into the playoff race as they host the Red Stars on Saturday. We know there's been a lot of changes with this Gotham FC side off the pitch. What do they need to do, Aly, to get back on track?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, Poppy. 6 games without a win, and they're going to be hosting Chicago Red Stars that are coming off a big victory against Kansas City, 3-0, where they blanked them. I think this Gotham FC team is an interesting one. We know they have a new manager in Scott Parkinson. He will not be there for this game, so they're going to be with an interim manager as Freya Coombe has left the club. And ultimately, the decision of where to play Ifeoma Onumonu, I think, becomes a big one, because when we asked why was Ifeoma being so consistent and productive in this season, she said, look, I think it's because we've slotted her central, and she asked more questions of the opposition in that role. Well, since Carly Lloyd came back into the fold, Ifeoma Carly partnered up top in a 2-front, but that was in a 3-5-2 that did not go well. And since then, they've resorted to their more comfortable 4-back, which means Ifeoma is now on the outside and Carly Lloyd is central. So I think the way that this Gotham team starts to find some joy, starts to find some success in these games, is to get Ifeoma in more central channels. How do they do that? I think Carly Lloyd needs to drop off and be more of a false 9 and allow those channels to open up for Ifeoma to run into. And of course, getting Midge Purse back into the fold would be huge. I'm not sure whether she'll be available for this match, but they absolutely need her attacking presence. And then Aly Long in the last match against Chicago, Gotham did get the victory 2-1. Aly Long had a great goal. Playing forward is the key for them. She's got to be more aggressive in her positioning and in her possession. She was the one that started out a play and then made a run just from a deep midfield position and got on the end of a service to give them that go-ahead goal. Ultimately, for this Gotham FC team, one thing they have to rectify is concessions. They let 3 goals in their first 8 games they conceded. In their last 8 games, they've conceded 12. They've been without Mandy Freeman. I don't think she's going to be back, and they've got to get that right, I think, before they can really start to impose themselves on the opposition. Otherwise, they're leaving themselves open on one end, and they're not finding production on the other.
Couple of great points there on and off the pitch. And speaking of changes off the pitch, Racing Louisville announced their parting ways with Christy Holly. We know they've struggled so far as of points this season, but this comes less than 2 weeks after they won the inaugural Women's Cup. Were you surprised with this news, Ali, and what does it mean for this team moving forward?
I was incredibly surprised, and they had beat Bayern Munich, by the way, in that international cup that they held. But I think what we're seeing is in the NWSL growth in terms of women's football of a lot of turnover managers and, clubs not getting it right on their hires and finding that they don't fit their systems. So moving these coaches on, doing it in an expeditious way, doing it in a way that is transparent, I think is something that everyone is calling for and wants to see out of the league. But I think this is part of the development and growth of what we would consider still a relatively new league, as it will be entering its 10th season next year. So I do think doing it at this point is interesting, and I'm sure more will come out. I don't know the reason for dismissal. Apparently there was cause. That was the exact verbiage from Louisville. And I would guess that this is going to shake up the club, and this is going to shake up the players. This is an expansion side, and they've been scraping along trying to find points. And I do think that this is going to, ultimately unsettle them. But sometimes when you have manager changes, you get a team that has a lift. And we'll see if that's the case in their next match. Having said that, they're going to actually have an advantage as they host OL Reign. As good as OL Reign is what form OL Reign is, they're going to be the ones coming in their 3rd game in this 7-day stretch. Louisville will have had rest this whole week. So one of the gripes before Christy Holly was let go was that his team was fatigued, tired. They didn't have the depth. Well, that won't be an argument necessarily as they face OL Reign, as they host OL Reign in this match. So that's one thing they have going for them.
So Racing Louisville have struggled in their inaugural season. Let's talk about the opposite end of the table, though, with the league leaders, the Portland Thorns. They suffered their first loss in 11 games on Sunday. This weekend, they'll host the Spirit. What are you expecting the response from the Thorns to be come Saturday, Ali?
A big response. This is a side that was rolling, and we talked about the ability to assimilate back in these internationals into the squad, whether that would be a hiccup for this Portland Thorns side or whether or not they would just take it in stride. And you look at their last 3 matches, only 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw. And so I do think it's been a bit of an issue for them. But the last time out, Portland against Washington got the victory. It was when Olivia Moultrie actually got her first start, I should say, for the Portland Thorns. She picked up the assist to Simone Charlie. Still questions around whether Simone Charlie will be available for selection in this matchup against the Spirit, but that would be a big boost to them. Just another threat offensively. Whether she starts alongside Sophia Smith, who has been incredible, and she's been in such good form. And I think that's a key player for this matchup because we saw what she did against Gotham FC, her ability to close, force mistakes, sense weakness in the opposition, when they are trying to build out of the back is a special instinct that she has. And we know this Washington Spirit side is they're dedicated. They are committed to building out of the back. They are not going to play direct. And so there are going to be some opportunities that present themselves if Portland Thorns want to get on their press. They're going to be recovered. They were coming off of a 5-game stretch in 15 days. So they were gassed in that big rivalry against the OL Reign. And really, Mark Parsons told me that he was upset that even though they didn't play well, he thought they could have picked up a point, and disappointed the squad ultimately. So big response, I think, is expected out of this Portland Thorns side, but they're coming up against a Washington Spirit side that did blank North Carolina, who's been in incredible form. So they picked up a point in their last match, and I do think that Washington Spirit with Trinity Rodman, Ashley Sanchez, and Hatch, of course, who is one of the league leaders in goals with 7, those players are special 1v1. We've seen on this Portland Thorns side is that those outside backs are vulnerable at times to players taking them on the dribble. They can create moments that are special just out of nothing, and they're really strong in transition. OL Reign took advantage of that. We'll see if Washington Spirit pulls a page out of that playbook.
So what a match that's going to be. The Thorns with a 4-point cushion at the top. They'll be looking to keep that distance between themselves and the rest of the league. Also coming up, the Pride will host the Dash on Sunday. Just 3 points between these two teams, Aly, as they both fight for a place in the playoffs. Who do you favour in this one?
You know, I think it's a difficult one for the Dash. Again, 3 games in 8 days, traveling to Orlando, playing at 4 p.m. Eastern time in that heat. Both these teams accustomed to those climate conditions, but the question will be, is Alex Morgan return to the fold for Orlando Pride? We've seen that she's back in training. Will she be available for selection? If that's the case, big boost for that side. And they've got to get Sydney LaRue going. So if you look at who do I favor, I think it depends on whether Alex Morgan is available for selection. I think if she gets back in, that is going to free up space for Sydney LaRue, who has not been able to find the back of the net in the last 3. Unlikely score in the last match for Orlando's. We're getting a look at it here with Timrack. She's the one who picked up the go-ahead goal. And I do think that with this matchup in particular, it is really going to be about who gets their internationals flying and gets them flying fast, because we saw in the last match for the Dash. We'll see what happens tonight, but getting Nichelle Prince, Daly, those players in sync with each other is going to be important. And let's not forget that with this Dash side, Abby Dahlkemper, a new acquisition, that gives flexibility, something that we've never seen out of the Dash in years before. Flexibility in system. Clarkson has been married to his 4-back, a 4-3-3 system, 4-1-4-1 defensively. Now they have a third center back. So does he start to change things up and give a different look for this squad if he opts to go to a 3-back? You know, what does that look like against, I would say, an Orlando Pride team that has those dynamic front runners?
So a couple of question marks there, but a win for the Dash would put them equal on points with the Pride. So a massive match coming up from Orlando. And to conclude the action, 2 teams at opposite ends of the table will go head-to-head as Kansas City host the Courage. North Carolina just beat them 4-0 with 10 men 2 weeks ago. However, Aly, I was surprised to see the stats from this game. They all favoured Kansas City, possession, shots on target. But as we know, that doesn't tell the full story sometimes. So having said that, what are you expecting in this one?
You know, it does not, absolutely. And what we've learned with this North Carolina Courage team is that they're still dynamic going forward. I expect this game, however, Poppy, to be different. If you think back to the first game these two teams played where Kansas City hosted, it was a 0-0 draw. It was right after the trade. And it's a very different match. When you look at the way that North Carolina can play on that really small size field that Kansas City has, their box is limited. There's not a lot of space between the lines. There's not a lot of space outside that perimeter of the box where this North Carolina Courage loves to live. And on top of that, there's not space in behind the opposition. And so I don't know if this North Carolina Courage will stick with what we saw in the last match, was when they shifted into a 3-back. Abby Ersig, one of their starting center backs, was injured. That was the reason for that shift in system for this side. Do they stick with that, or do they go back to their more traditional 4-4-2 with the box midfield? Not entirely sure. Although I would say is their press is not as effective on the smaller field because Kansas City doesn't care to have possession. They want to get it forward as quickly as possible. They want to play direct. So how does Paul Riley, North Carolina Courage, try to change things up and be a bit more unpredictable? And really, as you said, Poppy, two matchups that statistically have favored Kansas City, but not on the score sheet. So very different match. I still think North Carolina is flying 7 games unbeaten. And of course, the momentum is on their side. And Kansas City coming off of that 3-0 loss to Chicago. They've been hot and cold, as you'd expect out of a group that is really newly put together in an expansion side. But I still think that this is Courage's game to win and continue their momentum going forward. They've just got to get their front runners back in sync with Dabinia. That is a key for how this team ultimately will advance through into playoffs and make a run.
So the Courage looking good. Kansas City, the playoff race may be out of reach for them, but they've got nothing to lose at this point in the season. So we'll see how it all unfolds. Aly Wagner, the very best insight as always. Thank you so much for joining us with what we can expect this week. And here is a look at where we stand heading into Wednesday night's match. The league leading Thorns will look to keep their 4-point cushion at the top, but then only 7 points separate second through 8th place in the standings. The Dash, with a win against the Pride this weekend, will put them level on points. And as it stands, Gotham FC on the outside looking in. They'll be looking to get back in the playoff race as we come into the home stretch. What an exciting finish to the season it is setting up to be, as yet again, it's all to play for this week in the NWSL.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.